That's been done. Okay. Okay, you're on.
All right, thank you. Thank you for coming today. I know it's a small crowd, but yes, people didn't want to come out in the rain. And we have 3 guests here, 4 guests. One is a 2-in-1. Their team. So we have Lisa Day, who's here from Legal Shield. And I'll let them all introduce themselves and say a little bit about themselves. Eula Master and Riley Newhall, who's from Lee Firth, Milton and Ewan, Roberts Funeral Homes. And Kevin Morrow,
Merrill. No,
And he's the
second.
town sexton, so, I guess we'll start with you, Lisa, you're on the end, so.
Good morning, everyone. So am I going first?
Sure, you want to tell a little bit about yourself, and you can go first too.
Yeah, sure, because you got my PowerPoint on the flash drive here.
Oh, okay. You want me to
She had
share
enough holes for it. Stand, I'm not used to sitting.
I don't know if
I'm
it's,
not a sitter, I'm a
It's
stander.
not,
no. Actually, we've got everything plugged in.
let's see.
You might have to put it on her computer and send it to you that way, or?
How did she get the other one?
She didn't.
She did it, I got it right here.
Oh, she's got
Got
a,
a dual.
before?
I'm not, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We're at that point.
I was gonna say, I was just at Staples yesterday and I should have bought one for myself.
So. What are we doing?
Here's Lisa's.
Okay. So. What about plug into? I don't know if that's plug in.
Oh, it's the wrong.
White part on.
See, this will plug into here, but that's what I
Then
was.
can you,
Yeah, it should go into the white one, right? It's the male, female.
Right.
Right, I think you gotta plug it into, will it fit in that white one? The white part?
In the end of it.
Right.
This does not
it
come
doesn't
on.
come off.
Oh, it doesn't. I thought that was a
Not
female
come
and,
on. So I thought it would.
Um,
Let's do the, except I lose control when I do this.
Don't do that, I've seen that before.
It will adjust play.
well, you just gotta click on the PowerPoint on it, yes.
Yeah, you'll have to.
Yeah, through the mouse.
Yeah, just go to the Will Workshop folder.
But it's like the auto file.
I'm cutting myself off, I'll sit.
Stand.
All I'm seeing is like my middle. I don't wanna see that.
Select to choose here. Lisa, are you on?
Just, did it pull up?
It would not pull
Can
up
we get to, just the,
USB.
Yes.
Old fashioned.
Teams, it's called Teams.
When you can get
Yeah, we
PowerPoints
saw
to
it.
work, though, they work really well.
I get my point across with this.
And then the Will Workshop folder. And it's the only PowerPoint.
Presentation.
Presentation, yeah. Perfect, thank you.
And
Okay, do you want me to sit? Oh, okay, so that's up,
Yeah.
so.
do you want to sit here?
Or no, I didn't know if you wanted me to sit or stand or for the Zoom, which is gonna be,
Okay.
does it matter?
you just have to tell us when to advance.
That's fine. Okay, good morning again. My name is Lisa Day, so, the only one I know is Sue, other than, so that's good. I like, unfamiliar faces, so you can kind of get to know who I am. I've been a resident of Belgrade for, I don't know, 45 years or so, I kind of lose track. Live here with my husband. My family, they're all in Belgrade, except for one who's in Sydney, but they're all in the district, and, we have 4 children, 7 grandchildren, and I love what I do. I work from home. I've been working with Legal Shield for the last 8 years. I love this company. located out of Ada, Oklahoma. So they're local, right? And we are independent associates, but what we do is we offer services for our legal and identity theft, but we offer, like, we protect families, we protect businesses, we do employee benefits for companies with our services that we, at discount pricing. And it helps the company's bottom line, and there's no out-of-pocket cost for them. But what I love, you go to the next slide, actually, thank you. I love to educate people because sometimes there's services out there that people are not aware of. So we have a lot that we can help families with. So I just wanted to, it's not gonna be very long. I'll be very quick with this, but lets you know that you have options, okay? So, and just kind of, like I said, let you know there's resources available and that are very affordable. Today's a will workshop that's going to help you. You may have heard of some of this stuff before, you might be aware of some of, about wills, but, there's always things that are changing. And our law firms are always keeping us up to date, so that's what I love. So the last will and testament, basically, it's a document, right? It's a legal document that is basically gonna it provides direction. It provides, like the courts, the state, and, what to do with your estate. So having that in place ahead of time, we have to do this while we're here, right? We have to do it in our lifetime and maintain it. A will is not a one and done. You have to update because our lives change and our assets change. So it's good to keep them updated, okay? So it gives direction for your family, of what you wanted. It's your wants of what you want to do with your personal possessions after you're gone, okay? It gives that direction. And it's for your own peace of mind. Having it done and completed, it gives you so much peace of mind, and your family will thank you, okay? Without a will, this is where it creates a lot of havoc, turmoil, hard feelings, families start fighting, unfortunately. And what happens is that your estate goes to probate, of course, which, I mean, all wills, all estates have to go to probate because that's just how they deal with it. But it's without that will, you're not giving them direction of what you want to do with your estate, with your assets, right? So the court will decide what to do. So you really don't want that, because it might not be something that you want. So, and the problem with also that in being in probate, the longer it's in probate, it adds up a lot of court fees and taxes. So, which of course come out of your estate, right? So, doing your family the best favor that you can do for them is getting your wills done and having it done, right? Just be prepared for the inevitable. You could go to the next one. Okay, so I'm just gonna follow. I can't quite read that far away. So Legal Shield conducted a nationwide survey of asking people, do you know how important a will is, right? Of course it's important. So 90% said, yes, we know a will is important, but nearly 60% of the people have not done it yet, okay? There's many reasons why people drag their feet. It's not a cheery subject, I get it. But again, still being proactive is important. So 58% experienced the conflict, understanding what happened when there was no will, okay? 56% said they may have the spouse might have their will done and the other one doesn't. It's common, but if you're usually, I mean, obviously if you're together, you might as well just do them both at the same time, right? That's usually the sensible thing to do. 37% of adult children showed that they knew their parents had a will, but didn't know where it was, didn't know how to access it. So we want to be having those conversations with our kids. Hey, if anything happened to me, this is where you find this. you know, very simple, but again, it's not a topic that people, it's not like a coffee topic or a wine topic, you know, you want to just kind of, but my parents, that happened with my parents. I lost my dad in 2023, after a 4-year battle with cancer, but near the end, like they had everything taken care of, but you know, these things, you know, he was starting to think a lot of, you know, what happens after, you know, when he's not here, and he was just worried about my mom, and he would say, make sure you do this for mama, make sure you take care of this, and even now, my mom, who's 81, and, you know, I help her, my brother and I help her a lot with stuff, and she forgets stuff, so she's like, if anything happens to me, this is where you find this, if anything happens to me, my stuff is in the safe deposit box. Maybe I'm like, okay, you know, like, you don't want to think about it, but when that happens, I'll be like, oh, where did she say that was? So we gotta be having those conversations. 22% said that they may have done a will, but never updated it. So we want to make sure that that gets updated. And 36% said that there was surprises for the beneficiaries in the will. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not so good. So go ahead and, so this one is, oh, okay. Usually it's on mine, it comes up each line, but that's okay. These are some common myths that, we've heard these things before. And I don't know, sometimes people's perception of will, you know, you just think, where do they get that thinking from? But, so a lot of people said, you know, I don't need it if I want everything to go to my kids. Of course you need it. Everyone needs a will, plain and simple. Doesn't matter who you're gonna leave what. It's gotta be in a legal document. My family members will take my kids. Again, nothing's gonna happen if it's not in a legal document. But it's good, you should have those conversations with family. You know, like the young, if you kind of wanna, if anything happens to me, you know, will you take my children? Will you be guardian of my children? You know, we gotta be having those conversations. Because you kind of need to know it to put it in a will. So it's good to maybe kind of like, who do I know that would be, you know, that I feel would be a good guardian to raise my children. It's not an easy thing, but it still has to be thought of. We don't have kids, so a will is not necessary. Hogwash, because again, everybody has stuff. Everybody has an estate. When you're gone, somebody is going to be getting your estate. So wouldn't you rather be the one to decide who's gonna get it instead of letting the courts decide? So again, everybody needs a will. And I hear this a lot. I can just write something on paper and get it notarized. This statement makes me cringe because again, it's that perception of like, why would you think that would be okay? No attorney is going to agree to that, first of all. No attorney is gonna say, yeah, go ahead and do that. No. And the thing that the problem with that is, even if you write something on paper and get it notarized, you're not gonna have, it's not gonna contain all of the proper legal information and the legal jargon wording that goes with it. So it's still gonna get contested in court and probate, right? So why take that chance and just get it done the right way? Okay. So
We do have quite a number of people who walk in through the door that have handwritten their own wills and asked to have it notarized.
if it's notarized, the court probate will take into consideration,
Right.
but again, it still can be contested in probate, plain and simple. So it's just a risk that you're taking. And I understand that, you know, it's a cost thing, because when people talk about attorneys, I call it the pucker factor. Just the word lawyer or attorney makes people cringe because they're always thinking costs, right? It is expensive. So that's why I'll explain what Legal Shield and how we make it very affordable and easy. So per Maine law, a valid will must be signed in front of 2 witnesses who cannot be named in the will, and witnessed and signed by a notary. That's what makes it legal, okay? And you can go to the next one. All right, so the 4 goals of estate planning, one is to manage your estate during your lifetime while we're here, making changes as our life changes, okay? to select an executor, which is that person that you trust to make sure to carry out that, their job is to carry out your wishes, right? In other words, to make sure things get distributed to the people that it needs to go. Yes, and, an attorney will oversee that, but it's still their job to make sure, okay, you're getting this, you're getting this, you're getting this, depending on what you had, what you write in your will. And it's actually a good thing you can pick more than one executor. Because, it's actually good to pick two. Because if you pick one, and then let's say down the road, if the will doesn't get updated, what happens if that executor is no longer here or not able to carry out that job? What happens? Your estate will go into probate again, maybe it could be a second time. And then they have to decide who's gonna be the executor. So they have to pick somebody to carry that out. So every time your estate goes to probate, you got court fees and taxes on top of that. So if you have two people, so if the first person is not able to carry out, then you at least already have a second executor chosen, okay? So it avoids that going back to probate again. So you can pick as many people as you want, believe it or not. And then, of course, to provide for minor children or your pets, because we know that, we have one too, a fur baby, but our pets are like our children pretty much, right? So. Thank you. All right, what is your estate? Basically, it's all the assets that I say accumulated, but our assets change, right? So, but basically, so think about your real estate, home, a camp, maybe you have a vacation home in another state, a condo, pretty much any real estate. Your bank accounts, checking, savings, Christmas club, education savings. Your investments, do you have any rental property? Stocks, bonds, financial trusts, personal property. Think of everything that you have. And is everything that you have now the same stuff that you had 15, 20 years ago? Probably not, right? So that's why we need to update our wills regularly. Our vehicles, we change those frequently. Motorhomes, campers, furniture, jewelry, guns, tools, antiques, ATVs, snowmobiles, everything. Think of everything that we own, right? Your jewelry, your guns, tools, antiques, those are common items that get passed down from generation to generation. Like you might have a gun, own a gun that might have been your father's or grandfather's or great-grandfather's. It's gonna have value. All this stuff has value, folks. I've heard so many people say, I don't really have anything. I don't have anything to worry about spending the money to make up the will. I don't have anything to leave to anybody. You have more than you think you do, really. If you have a home to go to at night, if you're sitting in a recliner watching TV, you own the recliner, you own the TV. If you're eating supper, you're sitting at the dinner table that you own. This is still stuff that has some type of value that still is gonna get passed on, okay? What about hobbies? Things that we spend money on that, get pricey. If we play golf, how much are golf clubs? They're not cheap, right? What about stamp collecting? That has a lot of value. Remember the days of the baseball cards or the football cards? Remember how much value that used to have, those baseball cards? Any of those things that we spend money on, our hobbies still have value. So they're still what about I make scrapbooks. I do scrapbooking. I've been doing it for years. I love them. I have so many, I had to put them in my will because I don't want my kids fighting over who's gonna get what. That's how many I have, and I keep making them, so they're gonna have to divide them up, but I put them in there because it's still, I have so much invested, and to me, it's a legacy, it's an heirloom that I'm leaving them, but they still, are gonna divide them up. Life insurance policy is still considered an asset, okay? What about on even your retirement accounts, your IRAs, your 401ks? What about, do you own a business, an LLC, or do you own shares of a corporation? So you gotta think about that. Who's gonna take over those shares? Who's gonna take over that business? So, what about a potential inheritance? Do you know if you're gonna be getting an inheritance? You wanna talk to the attorneys about that to make sure that that gets put in there to pass on, right? And you can go to the next one. Digital assets, guys, we live in a digital age. We do a lot online, a lot. So there's a lot of stuff up here that when you think about when we're gone, we need to have someone maintain these accounts or shut them down. You don't want to be leaving your Facebook accounts, your LinkedIn, your Twitter. You don't want to keep those open because they can be hacked and people can get information from you. Probably, I think, we do a lot with identity theft too, and it's the worst it's ever been ever in the world, not just in the country. But one of the things that people look for, and this is very sad because we all know that people play off other people's misery, where when someone passes away, you have to be very cautious about identity theft for that person's social security number. So it's sad. This is what the identity thieves do. They're good at it, but they check newspapers, they check, obituaries. And it's sad when they see that someone has passed away. You gotta be very, very careful about, who you're giving that to, right? That social security number, because this is what they're trying to do. And it can still be used. People think, well, I'm gone, it can't be used. It takes months to close stuff down. My mother, it was like 7 months trying to get things changed over to her name from my father's name and getting accounts closed. It can happen, okay? Email accounts. How many email accounts do you have? You might have a work and a personal. What about your, like I said, all your social media accounts, digital storage, anything that you have an account for? Some of it's just your demographic information, okay? But, what about anything? The one thing that really scares me is the genealogy sites. Do you know anybody that's ever sent in DNA to a site? Anybody ever know anybody that's done that? So, I do a lot of the genealogy. I'm on those sites a lot. I've never sent in DNA, but I'm a history buff, especially when it comes to my family. But the 23andMe, you guys probably have heard this in the news. Last fall, 23andMe, their DNA database had a major hack, right? Major breach for DNA. So they've been struggling, trying to, revamp the company, and now they've just, filed for bankruptcy. So the thing with the DNA, it's good if you want to do that, get the information, but then call them and close it out, close it down, get rid of your DNA. Like, they claim that they've got rid of it all. I would still cringe on that. Like, I would still question it. So just be very careful if anyone that, I want to send in my DNA, like, okay, well, just be very cautious, but I probably wouldn't use 23andMe. But any of these, right? Bitcoin, I don't know much about Bitcoin, but I know some people that do it. So these are things that you need to have somebody know where the accounts are, know how to get to them, know how to shut them down, okay? Or maintain them, because you don't want to leave this stuff open. This is your digital footprint. Thank you. All right, so when should we update a will? So if we've already done a will, question is, how long has it been? If you ask any attorney, they're gonna tell you on average every 3 to 5 years. Or unless you've had something major change in your life, okay? So major changes obviously would be like if your marital status has changed, you move to another state. And that because every state is different when it comes to estate planning and like taxes, property taxes. Every state's different how they handle this stuff. So what about, if you made any major purchases, bought a house, a camp or whatever, or, a car. If you recently added children, if you've had another child, or if you've adopted a child, or sadly, if you've lost a child, right? These are major things that happen in our lives that we need to revise our will. What about, if you feel the need that you want to change the person that you are leaving as guardian to your children, if you've had to change your heart and think, you know what, I'd rather have this person, so you definitely want to think about that. What if, and nowadays, we know that things, change, right? It's just like the way society is nowadays, it's crazy. Life gets crazy. We know there's a lot of grandparents that are now the sole caregivers of their grandchildren, right? What about in incidents where we might have an elderly parent that lives with us? For whatever reason, and maybe they can't stay on their own, they can't get around, or they get confused, they're not allowed, they can't really live. If they're living with you, if you become the sole guardian of someone, now you're gonna update your will. Because what happens, if something happens to you, what's gonna happen to them? So now you need to have like a backup person to take care of them, right? So we need to be thinking about that stuff. If you had a shift in your relationship, of course, if you have, if you need a power of attorney for something, because you can get a power of attorney for many different things. Anybody have kids, or that maybe that have kids going to college, teenagers, grandkids going to college? Okay, so a good thing to have, if you have a college age student that is going to school, especially out of state, you want to have a power of attorney done for them. Because if they're over the age of 18, and if anything happens, if they get sick at school, you need to be able to have access to their care. You need to be able to have access to the college, and what's gonna happen, like with them, with their grades or whatever, or even the hospital with the doctor with who they're seeing, so that you are, what's going on with their, with their healthcare. Okay. Skip that one. Yep. Okay, so what happens when there's no will? So it's called intestate. Dying intestate just means that someone passed away and they didn't have a will. And it's called the law of intestate succession. The problem with this law is that it was created way back in the early 19th century, and they're still using it today, sadly. So when you look at all how society has changed our families, it's not just cut and dry, mom, dad, kids. It's, we have blended families now, right? Many different blended families. So they're taking this law and they're saying, okay, the court has a will designed for you. Well, it's so cut and dry. Trust me, this is where the court's going to make decisions for you, for your estate, for your family. And you don't want that. We know we don't want the state making decisions for us. So, just having that done, having it in place is peace of mind. And without it, again, it creates so much turmoil. It's stress for your kids. It's not a fun time, because this thing can go on for years. Your estate can, be in probate for a long time. And the longer it is, it gets more costly. People don't want to think that their families fight. I've had somebody say, oh, our kids are very close. They're really close. They get along. Yeah, they might get along now until they're faced with a situation like that. So it's best not to test the waters. And the other thing is, when there is no will, the courts don't see, like, if you have a blended family, you have your children, and then maybe if you remarried and now you have stepchildren, the courts don't see the stepchildren as like your children. So without a will, they get nothing, okay? And also, without a will, if you wanted to leave a close friend an item or money or whatever, or even make donations to an organization, your favorite organization, without that will, that won't happen. Okay, so again, all that has to be documented. The next one. My question to you, that one. Is your life insurance beneficiary form up to date? Anybody that, if you have any major change in your life, you want to be checking that. This sadly is something that gets overlooked when couples go through a divorce. And it can be, even if it's a nasty divorce, right? Because they're stressed, they just wanna have this done and over. And a lot of times what happens is if one of them passes away, and the life insurance beneficiary form is not updated, you just left your ex-spouse that you couldn't wait to get rid of a lot of money. Okay, so you don't really wanna be doing that. You wanna be, making sure that your beneficiary form is up to date. Right, so whatever, it doesn't matter what's in your will. That life insurance beneficiary form, whoever you have listed as your beneficiary, that stands. So that trumps the will, believe it or not, okay. The other thing I like to mention is anybody that knows, if you have a beneficiary that has disabilities and is collecting SSI benefits or may collect SSI benefits in the future. So SSI benefits, we know, are benefits from the government that help them like pay their medical bills or help them basically live, right? Be able to live, a normal life. And what happens is, if you have them named as a beneficiary, you need to talk to the attorneys and get a special needs trust for them, for that life insurance money. Because what happens is, of course, they have to claim their taxes, right? So to continue to get their benefits, the government always looks, right, at what they're making and whatnot. And then if all of a sudden they get this large sum of money, that's gonna hurt them with their benefits, because the government's gonna say, you don't need our benefits anymore, right? You've just got this money. So very important so that they don't lose their SSI benefits. You gotta talk to the attorneys and do a special needs trust for that, so that they can take a little at a time, or however you wanna set that up. But just know that that's something that needs to be looked at as well. All right, good news. Legal Shield makes it very easy and affordable. Legal Shield, you can go to the next. Established in 1972, we protect over 4.5 million lives in the US and Canada. So we're through Canada as well. Our vision is to provide equal access to liberty, equality, justice, and opportunity that every human deserves. Legal Shield's story has been featured in Forbes, Yahoo Finance, CNBC, Bloomberg, and is given an A+ rating on the Better Business Bureau. Because some people, even though they've been around for 53 years, some people have still never heard of Legal Shield. They don't advertise traditionally because it's too costly. They leave it up to people like me as associates, and we do a lot of social media advertising to keep the cost down. With a Legal Shield membership, your will, your living will, your medical power of attorney, and your healthcare power of attorney are all part of the membership. You don't pay anything extra. It's all part of the membership, okay? It's a monthly fee. And you can update it every year, every will year. Next one. So I have a packet. I have packets on the table. I hope everybody takes one. So in this packet, there's a guide to estate planning, give you some tips. There's a will questionnaire. So, and also in that questionnaire, I've got some forms that our law firm here in Maine our Legal Shield law firm. They're called Robinson, Krieger and McCallum. They're located in Portland in the Old Port. Fantastic. They've gotten awards 4 years in a row for being the top Legal Shield attorney law firm. All of Legal Shield has over 100 and under 200 law firms throughout the US and Canada that help. So every state is covered, right? Every state has a Legal Shield law firm, and they're top of the top of the best law firms in every state. So there's a power of attorney and then a advanced healthcare directive questionnaire that goes with that. So if you guys, with couples, make sure you'll probably want to take another one, because you each will need your own, okay? Unless you want to photocopy that, but I've got some extras on the table there. With every membership with Legal Shield, we have a member perks discount program. It's one of the largest discount programs in the country. You have access to over 400 businesses. I save money all the time when I'm traveling. I book my flights, I rent my cars. I'm always shopping for my discounts because we can save a lot of money. It comes with every membership with Legal Shield. And There's some other flyers in here. This one here has basically, it breaks down, the legal plan is broken up into 3 different plans. Your basic, preferred, and premium, and it shows you everything that's included with the membership. So you can kind of decide which one would be best for you. You've got my business card. If you have any questions, I would love for you to call me. I can sit down with you guys, you know, just so you can decide, you know, what you want to do, how you want to do it. But like I said, this is the most affordable and they make it fast and easy. You can have your estate planning done within 10 days once you send your information into the law firm. It's that quick. Their turnaround time is very quick and accurate. And we have a mobile app for anybody that loves using apps. So, and it's very easy. You can even do the questionnaire through the mobile app and send it right to the law firm. So, and that's what I do. So we love to educate and we love to assist people in what they need to do. So make sure you guys take anything that's on that table over there. And any questions on anything? Yeah.
Curious about the monthly plan.
Yeah.
It seems like you pay to set it up. If it's done in 10 days, what are you paying for month after month?
You just pay your month, membership goes every month. So whether you know, depending
I'm
on,
saying, what's the membership for if after you set it up?
oh, everything, there's things. I call it a life events legal plan because you can use it for everything, not just wills, not just for traumatic. You know, if you have maybe like a warranty that's not being honored, you bought an item and the company won't fix it, the warranty, they won't stand up to the warranty, you can call Legal Shield and say, I have this situation, what do I do? What are my rights? You can call them every day. You can call them for anything. You have 24/7 access, even if you have an emergency in the middle of the night, Sunday night, Saturday night, middle of the night. The app, you can tap the app, there's an emergency button and you can have an attorney on the phone within minutes. Or just, you know, for generalized business, you can set up a consult with an attorney. So if you're, you know, looking to get your will done, like this, most of this stuff is from the law firm, but these are stuff that they want us to use to give to you. It makes it easier for you to have this stuff prepared so that when you sit down with them, because they're gonna have questions anyway, of course, everyone's situation is different, right? So they're gonna have, you know, ask you questions. But this is all, you know, call the attorneys and, you know, I'm just here to be your representative with the company. If you have any questions, like customer service, but other than that, you know, you're dealing with with the law firm for everything. Do you get a speeding ticket if you have a lead foot like me? I've gotten a few, but the good thing is like with Legal Shield, even if I say, okay, I'm guilty, yes, I was going 10 over, like that was but the thing with the law firm, like you can take a picture of the speeding ticket with your phone. And it goes right, you can send it to the law firm right through the app. They're gonna call you because they'll have somebody represent you. And I've heard so many people say, I'll just pay it. I'm like, no, don't just pay it. Because the thing is, whether they can get it down or not, they can keep the points off your record, which will keep your insurance from going up. I always tell people, when you get a speeding ticket, you pay twice. You pay the fine, and then we also pay with our insurance again, because we know that that's gonna jack up our insurance, right?
So you're essentially having
It's
paying a legal retainer every month.
everything, yes. And you can use it for everything. Just, yes.
I have a question regarding, so you do the will.
Mhm.
Do you need to have a trust? Is it better to have a trust over your house and your property versus just having a will?
That would be a good question for the attorneys. I'm not an attorney, so I can't answer those questions, but the premium, if you look at the pricing of the memberships, the only one that has a trust is the premium plan. So you got basic, preferred, and premium. The basic is perfect for just a couple with no children, but it's limited. It might say 15% off, you know, their fee, the attorney fee. But if you need a trust, you're better off to pay the premium plan. Because one, you can update your will every year if you need to, and at no extra cost. But
Our children
Also,
keep having grandchildren, I don't know.
yes, but the premium plan will cover will cover trust.
Okay,
Yeah, so like I said, look at when you get a pack, there's a paper in there and it lays out the different, what's covered and what's not. So yes, they do all that. Yeah, so like I said, we use them for everything.
So if it's a monthly subscription.
Mhm.
Are you locking into a year's worth?
No,
Or if you
you don't
just
have to lock-
pay a
You can
subscription?
pay a year if some people like to pay a year, you can get 10% discount if you pay ahead for the whole year, but no, it just goes month to month. And you can keep the membership as long as you want. And, it's like, what they do is the reason that they're able to do it at the smaller rate. So a preferred plan, so like a family covers, it covers a family. So $37.95 a month, okay, for instance. So you can use it for everything, right? Even if you have teenage drivers, they get a ticket. I mean, I wish I had this when our kids were in school. Seriously, I didn't come into this until 8 years ago, but this would have been a game changer because we had 4 teenagers driving. It was a nightmare. But it's like your gym membership, right? You pay a small amount every month and you're able to use all of the services that they have there. Same idea. You pay a small monthly amount every month. Legal Shield takes a percentage of that membership that you pay in and pays their law firms ahead. So I know for a fact that the main law firm is paid like hundreds of thousands of dollars every month. One of the largest law firms that we have is Texas. And Legal Shield pays them over $1 million every month. It's prepaid. So you probably heard of prepaid legal services. That was Legal Shield years ago when they first started. It's prepaid, so they're there for us. Yeah.
If you send the documentation through Legal Shield and then end the plan, what happens to the documentation?
Your documentation, that you keep it, they keep it. It's what they do is so we just did ours like 3 years ago again, and we'll have to do it again because we keep getting grandkids, not that I'm upset. So what they'll do is you sit down with them, you talk with them, you can do that, you send it in to them. I keep it, just for filing purposes. When I do the will questionnaire, I just hang on to that. They'll talk to you, they'll do a rough draft and they'll send you the rough draft. And you look it over and say, oh, that's not right, or I want to change this. Once they send you the final copy, once you say, yes, this is all good, they'll do up the final copy, send it to you. It is up to you to get it notarized. That's the only expense that you're gonna have. Is to pay someone to get it notarized. That's it. So you gotta have 2 witnesses, with you that are not named in the will, and then a notary or to witness and sign it. That's it. And then I do recommend giving a copy of the living will and your power of attorney to your primary physician, so that they're on board. Also in case something happens medically, right? And then you keep it, and then you can update it as things change.
For notarizations and for the town of Belgrade, the residents is free.
Huh.
But I think Richard's question was also the second part, what if you decide to discontinue?
Oh, you
They
can just-
have your documents on file.
The
as-
attorney has your documents, not Legal
what
Shield.
hap-
The law firm would have your
And so
documents on
what-
file.
What happens to those? I mean,
The law firm will keep them on file with them as long as
But you have your own copies too.
yeah, but you're gonna keep your own copies as well, yeah. Right, so you're not, Legal Shield, the home office, they're only taking care of the payment part of the membership. Anything else that has to do with the law firm, it's between you and the attorneys, that's
Do
it.
they cover identity theft type items also?
We have identity theft, we have ID Shield, which is a different service. So, but yes, sometimes the 2 work together, because if you have something that, like if it affects your credit and you need something taken care of, then yes, Legal Shield, you can call the law firm and say, I've got them working on this, but I need this. So yes, they work very well together. So if you have any questions, like I said, my cards are I've got some on the table, I've got some in the folder, feel free to give me a call and, we can set up a time and I can sit down with you if you have any more questions.
Good, thank you.
All right, anyone else? No? All right, Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Brian, are you doing it for you? or-
Girls first.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna do tit for tat.
I was kind of go back and forth, if that's
Yeah.
okay.
So the one thing I'm wondering, is this being shared to Zoom? And,
It should have been when you presented. Yeah.
I'll take my thing so I don't forget
do
it.
you wanna run the show?
No, that's all right, I'll just stand
I
back.
wanna forget it.
Unless you want me to, I can.
No, that's-
I'd just like to say something. Young lady just presented, I just did my well, unfortunately, I will leave. But, I was really aware of it. But an interesting thing or two I found was this young lady asked about a trust, and we decided, my wife and I, to do a trust. There is a lot to it, there's a lot
Yes.
of questions.
There is a lot.
And one of the most interesting aspects that we found is that our lawyer explained that a lot of people are waiting. You mentioned 2 different reps,
Mhm.
which is really excellent advice. And our reps are going to, they have authorization over our estate until our beneficiary is 35 years old. Our attorney said a lot of parents and folks are taking their estates and holding, well, how you say it, the person that's overseeing it
Mhm.
until people are even 45 years old, because there's so much irresponsibility when the state's going on. I was amazed to hear that. That's a common practice. 35 and even up to 45-year-olds still have to answer to someone else before they have complete control of the estate because of some turmoil and issues. I found that very unique. So-
You can put any stipulations you want in a
Right.
trust. That's the good thing about a trust and having those conversations with the attorneys. Like I said, everyone's situation is different. Everyone, different family, so you can't just say, this is very basic, because it's not. So that's why they sit down and have these conversations with you or do it over Zoom so that, because they're gonna have questions. If they're writing up your will, they need to know a little bit more about you and, people change, your thoughts change, but maybe you said, okay, I wanna be buried when the first time you did your will, and now over time, we learn things and then it's like, okay, well, I changed my mind, I wanna be cremated. Yeah, you're gonna wanna update your will and revise it, but a trust, like I said, there's so many things you can put in a trust and so many stipulations that, that's why they're unique.
You can update them as time
Yeah,
goes on.
yeah.
And there's revocable and irrevocable.
Yeah, there's revocable and
if you have
irrevocable.
Irrevocable, you lose your homestead exemption.
And if you,
Yeah,
and if you
there's-
don't believe it
So you have
happens,
to be
Right.
careful about.
if you
what
don't
you're
believe it
doing.
happens, I deal with the end of it. And I've
Yeah.
seen families fighting over properties before we even had them in the ground.
Right, exactly.
And this,
Welcome to our world.
this,
That's-
this
yeah.
is our problem.
That's where it becomes very sad. I'm sorry, but it's true.
And if you do have something like that secured, it will take care of a lot of that
Right,
at the end.
I've seen fist fights over fishing poles
Oh.
at Graveside.
Yeah,
that's where people think, oh, they don't fight.
Oh,
Make a bet.
They will, they will.
yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, it
It
is
is
sad.
sad, very sad.
Can we make it bigger by any chance? Is that possible?
All bigger.
Especially for the old folks. I can't believe that.
Down on the bottom.
Well, it is.
Bottom right,
Yeah.
the projector screen, right up, right there.
Nope, next one over. Right there.
Right here.
No,
No,
We-
no,
No, that's.
If you can click on
projector
the-
screen, click on the projector
there,
screen
right
icon.
there.
Right there, yeah.
There you go.
There you go,
Full
awesome.
screen, yeah, full screen.
Half of the elderly, thank you.
Learn something new.
You can introduce first.
Okay, it's supposed to be girls first, but anyway, my name's Hugh Lemaster. I'm a licensed funeral director with Family First Funeral Homes. We have 19 rooftops, including our crematory. Closest to you would be Bayview Funeral Home in Waterville. In Oakland, we have Wheeler Funeral Home. Just down the road, we have Knowlton Hewens, which this lovely young lady is manager of, Riley Newhall, and we have Staples Funeral Home in Gardner. Those are just a few of our nearby offices. I work part-time for them. I'm semi-retired now. I'm also a cemetery, and I'm kind of a death care. Kim and Melissa will tell you I'm kind of a death care guru or whatever. I'm a state commissioner for cemeteries. I'm the vice president of the Maine Cemetery Association. I'm the vice president of my hometown, past president of the association there. So I'm pretty immersed in the death care industry.
My name's Riley Newell. I am manager of Knowlton and Hewens Funeral Home, which is located off of State Street in Augusta. And I've been a licensed funeral director for 3 short years now. So definitely still have a lot of ropes and hoops to jump through, but I grew up in the funeral industry. I've been working funerals since I was about 3 years old. My family did own and operate a funeral home located in Massachusetts. And we just put a little bit of a presentation together to kind of go over what making final arrangements for either you or your loved ones, and what that process looks like. So we can go to that first slide there. So we kind of wanted to start off by going over why is it important to pre-plan your funeral arrangements? The biggest thing is that it ensures that your family members are not left wondering what your wishes are. So pre-planning and sitting with a funeral director and going over what that process looks like, it really covers a lot of information. And even if it's, not necessarily talking about paying for your arrangements, but just pre-planning and putting something on paper that you came in and sat with a funeral director and you talked with them to see what your wishes would look like. We've had a lot of instances where family members come in and they're just so overwhelmed and they're relieved to hear that even if the cost wasn't taken care of, their mother or father or whoever it may be, sibling came in and at least wrote down what their wishes were. And then kind of going on to paying in advance for your arrangements, it does provide comfort and knowledge that the financial responsibilities, have been met. It also allows that your services can be tailored specifically to what you are asking for, whether it be down to the details on a monument to be placed in the cemetery, whether it be to what exactly you want engraved on an urn or what type of casket you were looking for. Every detail can be selected. As well as this gives your family members a chance to celebrate your life properly and mourn and, be with their grief. So many families that we see every single day lose someone unexpectedly. And not only are they needing to settle any estate on top of mourning the loss of their loved one, they're now planning and financing an entire funeral, which of course can be very, very difficult on top of everything else that needs to be taken care of. And kind of the devil's in the detail, just touching base on what I previously had said. Any specifics, as in if it was an open casket visitation, or a memorial service, or a celebration of life at a specific location. Any obituary information and what newspapers the family or the loved one would like their obituary to go into. Cemetery and lot information. The more we have, the easier it's going to be for your family members.
I have a question.
For sure.
What happens if you pay in advance and then you move?
Yes, so we can actually touch base about this. We're going into our mortuary trust agreements and what we offer, but we do have an option to transfer your account anywhere. If you did either pre-plan or prepay, we're able to transfer that account anywhere.
Okay, good, thanks.
Mortuary trust agreements, there's a couple, 3 different kinds. Credit for services, sometimes folks don't have the finances right up front to pay for everything initially, and so they can start to pay on it. We just did an arrangement with a close friend of mine recently. She was talking to her yesterday. She said, I'm almost paid up. And was out to lunch with her, and so it's a credit for services. What happens is it doesn't lock in the prices. But you've got to start and you're paying down that expense. Our prices can go up in the meantime, and they would be responsible to, to that new level of pricing. But we'll go on to the next part of the agreement. A guaranteed mortuary trust agreement requires payment in full in time arrangements, or that credit for services now arrives at payment in full when the contract would be changed. There's also life insurance policies. A life insurance policy mortuary trust agreement is viewed as a credit for services because we're not going to guarantee a service based on an insurance policy. I just do want to mention though that and show you we're since April 1984, the Federal Trade Commission as required, what they call the funeral service rule. They passed this extensive law back then. They have updated it significantly one time since that 1984 time, but it basically arrived at this. And it's, I think it's double-sided here, the 3 pages, legal pages. So you can see there's a lot of lawyers jargon and so forth, and any funeral home that you were to go into, for example, in the state of Maine, they're just gonna have a different name on top of the, the title, but the wording is all gonna be the same, because it's dictated by law. So we all operate under the same requirements, the legal requirements. So obviously, most folks, if possible, are looking, once they hear of the circumstances, to go with guarantee, that's the most desirable. But, we all live under, financial, whatever restraints are, constraints. So, credit for service is a great way to start if you can't do that, and then work towards the guaranteed, aspect of it. So,
And a funeral home can be labeled as beneficiary on a life insurance policy. So if you came in and you were looking to put together, a contract of funeral goods and services for potentially a cremation followed by a celebration of life or memorial service, and you didn't have the funds available to you at that very moment, we would do what we would call, and you came in with your life insurance policy information, you're able to actually change the beneficiary of that account to the funeral home, if that's what you wish to do. And if there is, for some reason, money left over, in that policy, then you can have a secondary beneficiary as well. But just to kind of give an idea of what happens when a person dies. So we do have staff available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, to assist anyone, whether a passing takes away at someone's home, whether it be, an unattended death or someone who's on hospice care, whether you pass away in a nursing home or a hospital, we always have someone available to bring you into our care. So that would be the first part. We would transport you to our funeral home. We do have, or whatever funeral home is selected. And legally, one person of your family members would be established as your next of kin. And they would be the person that's in charge to take care of all of your funeral arrangements. Even if it's prearranged, we would still meet with the family member and finalize everything. We have had circumstances where a loved one's wishes have been changed, and things need to be modified, whether it be a mortuary trust agreement, a prearrangement that was done 20 years ago. We may, just because we've guaranteed something, if it is a guaranteed mortuary trust, we are still able to make changes, of course. If that's what the deceased wishes were. So the next of kin would be contacted, and they're responsible for settling the funeral arrangements and planning of the services if needed. The disposition, which means whether it be someone is buried in a casket or cremated, that would be arranged for, again, if it's not already prearranged. And then the final disposition would take place, whether it be a simple cremation, as in your remains are cremated and then your cremated remains are given back to your family members, or if it means that you're going to be having an open casket visitation and then the final disposition would be a burial in a cemetery. There's so many different options, but that kind of would be the process of how that would take place.
additional information, we've already spoken about the Federal Trade Commission. They are the governing factor over all funeral service and basically the financial needs. Maine, Board of Funeral Service would be involved here in the state of Maine, more specifically with just exactly what happens to human remains. But more of the goods and services provided is overseen by the Federal Trade Commission. And the reason that they came into being was they used to be, unfortunately, some unscrupulous, in every business, there's unscrupulous people across the world, unfortunately. And so they used to sell packages that included things, services that might not have been needed, like embalming, if there was gonna be cremation, but because they had a package, they'd put different things in it so that they could expand their profit line. So the Federal Trade Commission came in 1984, not that you can't still use some packaging, but it's more specific now. So that you really have some oversight to make sure that your funds are safe and secure and gonna be used exactly for what you want. For instance, pages that already talks about where the funds go. Our funds are, by Gorham Savings, so it's a third party, so that, let's say we were doing arrangements with. Tim's relative, and she was here speaking with us in the funeral home. She doesn't make a check out to say Knowlton Hewens Funeral Home, she makes it out to Gorham Savings. All of these things have occurred because of the Federal Trade Commission, so there's a lot of safety guards built in now, is my purpose in explaining that. And then we're required, over on the table, there's some purple folders. We'd encourage you to take one home today, and that's our general price list. As soon as we sit down and do a funeral conference and we get to the money portion, we'll call it, the financial aspect. We're required immediate by law, before really any words start to flow, to hand the family that and explain that we're required to give you this by law. And yet anytime you can look at this and ask questions, we're gonna be verbally explaining it, but you actually have in writing in your hand. It's a very serious fine if we don't do that. So we're very versed in making sure that that gets passed to you in an arrangement conference. There's people that are on Medicaid, for example, right now, the law just recently changed. My mother has been deceased for several years, but this affected our family. Her funds eventually were exhausted. She was in a nursing home for several years. And we were encouraged to take what funds were left as time went on and make an arrangement, which we did. And we were allowed to expend up to a certain amount without being, it was exempt from assets. So we couldn't be penalized, and Medicaid was gonna, not be trying to take more of our funds. We set those funds aside. Legally, they were protected. They were there for a responsible reason. That's the way that the state looked at it. Currently, the ceiling for that was just recently raised. You can arrange a funeral nowadays for up to $18,000 without being penalized. Social Security, when there's a death in the family, Social Security, we make them aware that there's a death, and that changes things. Usually there's let's just talk about spouses. Your spouse may have a little more in their check than you do every month. We'll use it as an example. At the death, let's say that the husband had the larger amount and the widow does not. We'll just explain it that way. She would now assume the husband's higher amount. That's normally what happens. Not everybody's aware of that. It's a little bit of comfort when they do hear that, because they're already worried about how am I gonna survive? Am I gonna make it on my own if they don't have, sense of financial assets? So that's often a comfort immediately right up front to hear that. Death certificates. Death certificates are used for a number of reasons. They're not only used for this mortuary trust that might be established. They're used for if you're driving an automobile. I know a friend of mine in high school from my class died in the last year, and they still are trying to sift through problems, but one of the problems they had was this vehicle's in that person's name alone. They weren't married, they were just in their name alone. They need a death certificate to re-register that car, so you're not supposed to drive that car once death occurs until the registration's changed. There's bank accounts with just that person's name alone, stocks, bonds, other assets that will require death certificates. They're $15 for the first one. Let's say there's a death that occurs in Belgrade, they're gonna come to the town office, they're gonna get that certified copy, $15 for the first one, $6 thereafter. An average number seems to be 6 to 10 for most families, as an example. We always say, for any of the reasons that I just named off, you think you're gonna need them, get them that many times and at least 1 or 2 extra. I had some years go by and had kept a few extra of my mother's around and found that there were other reasons that came up. I knew where they were. And I didn't have to go back to the town office and use them. So death certificates have that official trimp on them. They may, certain banks or other places that you need to show proof of death may hand them back to you and say, we just photocopied it good enough. I would plan that people are gonna keep them. So assume you're gonna buy them and someone that you're gonna show it to is gonna take it from you. If you get it back, well, all the better. Cemetery and monuments. I'm also an employee of Collette Monuments. I've been working with them since 1989. Riley and I are both salespeople for that company. We're quite familiar with working with families and selling monuments. And I'm also a cemeterian. So the information that you put into your for arrangement. For instance, we're gonna say, well, what, will there be a burial in a cemetery? We'll use Pine Grove. I've come up here many times in a hearse over the years in procession. I've come up here with, with a monument company to do work. I also come up here with the fire department to put some flags in. So I'm quite familiar with local cemeteries here, and, all that information is documented, so it'll say like Pine Grove Cemetery, and if you know your lot information, that gets documented. So at the time of death, or at the time of the call, that we call this gentleman, he's not like scratching his head and trying to grab the map. We can go, lot 42, section 5, or wherever the nomenclature is here. And he said, yep, I can find that right away. Not everybody has that information, but it's good information to have, so that you're not making people struggle. And then you find out, you can purchase a monument, sometimes people will come in and say, I want everything done. I don't want to have to worry about anything when I leave. I want flowers here. I want you to help me find a celebration of life facility, and I want a monument done or some lettering services done. So, we oftentimes get into conversations and say, we're a full service funeral home. Is there any monument or memorial lettering services you need? And we take care of that aspect as well. All this is being, documented. With a mortuary trust that you've established, you're gonna receive every year a 1099 tax form that you would file with your tax reports. However, unless you have assets in excess of $600,000, it's generally just reporting it. It does not cause you any more tax to be paid. So that's some quick additional information about mortuary trust and what's kind of going on. Let's just mention a little bit about the sales sheet. So when you come in and you make your selections, whether it's a casket or a cremation, if it's a full burial or cremation, we're looking at caskets or urns, urn vaults for caskets. You're gonna, by law, again, this FTC rule that came out in '84, there's an additional form that I'm not showing here. It's a statement of goods and services. Every funeral home, again, has pretty much the same lineup, just the letterhead's different. Instead of Smith Funeral Home, it says Jones Funeral Home. And what I like to explain about it is, we all face death, even as a funeral director. When you lose a member of your family, it still, set you back, and you have to even think, even though you're familiar with all this. And so I like to explain really quickly what happens in a sales sheet or a goods and services sheet. Basically, I like to explain it as a pie. You have thirds. The first selection is the professional services facilities, and we still call it livery, even though we don't use horse-drawn hearse anymore. Although I've driven one. But anyways, all that going to the hospital, a place of death, transportation to a cemetery or crematory, the professional services fee, use of our facilities, that's all in that first piece of the pie. The second piece of the pie is the merchandise, meaning casket, urn vault, vault for a casket, cremation container, sundries like memorial cards, register books, anything tangible like that goes in the merchandise section. And those are prices that if you do that guaranteed price that we talked about, those are locked in. You could live for the next 200 years and the price is not going to change if you have a guaranteed service, for example. But there's the final category, or the final third piece of the pie, which is outside the funeral home's four walls. And it's important to understand about that. There's no profit margin built into that. It's just prices passed on directly through us. We'll pay Pine Grove Cemetery for an opening fee, for example. We'll show up with our burial permits and so forth and our check for whatever their grave opening fee is. But that's outside our four walls. We do not control, for example, what Pine Grove here charges for a funeral or a grave opening. We do not control what ministers' honorarium fees usually are. We do not control newspaper fees, death certificate fees, medical examiners fees. There's all kinds of fees. Medical examiners are normally required when cremation is a selected disposition. Disposition is a fancy word for disposal. So with that third category mentioned, we do not guarantee that, but we're estimating the cost with what we know, and we might anticipate even lettering for a monument. And we'll write an estimate for newspaper, lettering a monument, and hopefully you're gonna live another 10, 20, 30 years from the time you make the arrangement. But at the end of the time of this trust, it's being used, if it's in excess of the outside expenses, the funeral home can come back and ask you for, okay, the newspaper wasn't $300, it was $600, so we'd like to ask you for some money from your family. But it's just that aspect that we're gonna be asking additional funds for. And if the trust is done well, and we've done our homework well and invested wisely, we've hopefully kept up, and it kept up with the cost of inflation. And even if it's, just a little bit more, we're probably just gonna say close enough. But occasionally we do run into something that really jumped, and we just have to say we need a little bit more funding. But as far as the first two pieces of the pie, up to 300 years old, if it's guaranteed, it's not going up ever again. Paid for it once, end of the story. So. A lot of information there, real quick.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I would just comment that I've been on both ends of family members that planned and family members that didn't, and it's a huge, huge difference. My mother had everything planned, the obituary done, right, everything done. My mother-in-law did not, and, there was a lot of headaches and a lot of hassle, and so there is some benefit to planning.
As a funeral director, when my mother died, we had her prearranged, but still, when your mother dies, we're not immune, we're not, robots, we feel emotional pain. And it wasn't a great day when my wife and a clergyman walked in and said, your mother just died. I knew it was close, but, I just wanted to be a grieving son. And I was able to do that because, as Kim says, it was all prepared. All I had to do was decide what day. We were in obituary information a little bit, and it was really 99% done. I could be with family, go home, have a cup of coffee and hug my wife and extended family and just be son. And I think that's a huge difference. Instead of all that stress that, okay, we gotta make a lot of decisions now. I just lost my mom, I just lost my spouse. What a difference just having that knowledge that it's all done.
Thank you.
You're
Yes,
welcome.
thank you.
And our next one is Kevin, and Kevin will talk about the cemetery end of it.
Town Sexton, you're gonna come to me for purchasing of lots, which is very important because I'll have them call and say, we just had a passing, we're gonna do a funeral here. They'll come in and they'll give me a lot number that it's under. But sometimes it's your grandparents that bought it, names change, and it makes a lot of work for us in general, because I have to actually go and contact the family because, well, this isn't what it says in the computer. I can't bury somebody in this lot. You're gonna have to go to the family members and say, okay, our grandparents owned it, my father's buried there, now you've got kids and you gotta go to all of them. If you do not just purchase a lot and you plan on using somebody else's that bought it before you, and then to find out that you have rights to it, you have to bring me certain documents that will say, I can use this lot, and then I get back to them and tell them, okay, I've located a space to put them. And the cost of the lots right now, what it is, you can come in and pay Mary, for in-town people that, live year round, it's $400 a space. I take all your information, I put it on this sheet right here, your numbers, and, I download it into what we call a Sims program. And everything has documentation with her, documentation with me, it goes into a file, and then it goes into a computer system, into a cloud program. If you're an artist data that has property, camp property or lake property or anything like that, you have to write a letter of intent to me, and I bring it before a committee of 5 people, a sexton committee, and we talk about it, whether or not you're gonna be permitted to purchase a lot and be able to be buried into this campground, into this campground.
You got your number on here.
Supposed to be a camp today. And so as far as that goes, it makes it really easy if you have your own personal lots. That way, I have numbers that you give them, they call me and they'll say, it'll be plan 4, range 6, plot, whatever. And I'll say, okay, and I'll go out there, probe, make sure everything's ready, and it's smooth. Nothing, there's no surprises, and it happens frequently. We do have a lot of rules. There are cemetery ordinances right here that tell you pricing. Weekends, like if you're cremated during the week, it's $300 during the week for a cremation, for a grave opening, $400 on the weekends. They do that because they have to pay us overtime to be here to take care of all the, it's 3 or 4 hours from start to finish. If it's a full burial, it's $700 during the week, $800 on the weekends. Obviously, because there's a lot more work that goes into a full burial. So there's one of these over there, please take one, that way you can be familiar with it, because there's a lot of stuff, a lot of information in here. You know, a lot of people wanna put trees next to their stones, and they don't realize that. One of the big things that I see is, you'll plant these little trees, your kids might come visit. Grandkids, and then all of a sudden, you've got these trees that are overtaking your lawn, we gotta rip them out, because now it's gonna disrupt the stone, it's disrupting the yard. And it's just not being maintained the way the family would maintain them. It tells in here about not being able to plant anything that will grow over 4 feet in height, nothing with thorns, because I've got guys that will go by on mowers and it tears them up, so we cut them out. That's just, you know, a lot of good information in that packet. And in the event that you have a loved one that passes, my job in accordance, if I'm dealing with them, all I gotta do is fill out an intern sheet. The intern sheet just gives me the information I need to, the date, when it was, you know, the contact, which would be them if they're doing it, the deceased name, the plot number, and I can go take care of the whole and get that whole section ready for the family to show up. If not, if you're doing a cremation and you're not using a funeral home, I fill out a VS-50. VS-50 states that it goes to the state and allows them to know where you are. So if people do ancestry or they need to know the social security and all this stuff for legal parts of it. I bring this in, I give it to Mary, I pay her and she takes care of it. Makes it easy. And we do have in this ordinance, it'll say, if you are gonna do a cremation, our cemetery only allows non-biodegradable containers. And the fact for that is if I bury a wooden box, 2 years later, it decomposes and caves inside them. Now I gotta go back and fix it. So they've changed it, so everything has to be like a glass, marble, ceramic, stone, whatever it is, it cannot be biodegradable. So, and what I'll do with you, if you're not dealing with a funeral home, I'll have you fill out a check depending on whether it's cremation, whether the cremation is week or weekend. Fill it out, town of Belgrade, and I go and take care of the rest of it, and that way on the day, I'll need a copy of a cremation certificate or death certificate that I put with the VS-50 for the state of Maine, and it goes on file.
So if somebody did buy something that's biodegradable, they have to have the vault on.
Yeah, you buy a purchase of polyvolt. That's a unique thing. Be careful what you buy, because I've had people buy them and they're not more than, it looks like a Tupperware. I think I had this with you and they bought, and they brought one, and the first one that I ever saw it was a beautiful, nice, solid container. It works well, it's not gonna decompose, and then you can put, you know, extra stuff in with it, because some families, and I shouldn't say this, but, oh, can I bury? No, you can't bury your pet with your. But if you can buy a polyvolt and you seal it before I see it, and I have no clue, I'm gonna be on site when I put that in. The service I provide is, if we're doing a cremation, I have a bucket with a couple of scoops in it. I'll dig the hole, I'll put a cover over it, put the urn stand. And if you wanna put a couple scoops on for final goodbye, I have to be on site when you put the urn in the ground or the vault in the ground, or I can put it in for you. And then I'll walk away, let you guys do your finals, whatever's, and then as you start to filter out, I'll come over and finish off the whole burying and capping it off and taking the rest of that. So.
I have a question. How many people can you put on a lot if you're cremating?
You could put 3 cremations in one lot or 1 full burial.
What about monument sizes?
Monument sizes.
Well, there's restrictions.
Yeah, restrictions. If you have like a single lot, it can't be over 30 inches. It can't be over 4 feet in height, I think is what it's in here. I'm not sure because it's changed since the last time, but everything's in here on monument heights.
And the little are not permitted anymore.
What's that?
Mausoleums,
Oh, the on top of the ground.
yeah.
Yeah, no, we don't.
Columbariums?
Yeah, we don't put any on top of the ground.
What is it?
Cremation, when you have like a stone box with a little stone door and they put the cremations in there as opposed to being buried in the ground. And everything
Doors.
has to be in the ground in the cemetery. We've got one in our cemetery and it's not permitted. They're gonna be buried in the ground. They cannot use it. They can leave it there as their monument, but they will be placed in the ground.
Are they main rules or are they individual cemetery rules?
There's individual cemetery rules and then there's guidelines from state regulations, but it's mainly, like I said, I have a cemetery committee that I have to answer to. And if questions come up that, you know, like, for instance, we have a gentleman he lived in Belgrade. He has no ties to Belgrade, but he was in the military and his last word was, if something happens to me, I want to be buried in Pine Grove Cemetery. My ordinance says he has no ties to Belgrade. I cannot bury him. So.
Even though he was a resident?
Even though he was a resident, but he left, his family's no longer here, nobody's here, so you cannot purchase a lot, because that's just in the ordinance. So, as luck would have it, or fate would have it, it was his last word, that's what he wanted, what if he died in action or died, and, but he had a friend that was here, and they purchased a lot, and now they gave him permission and rights to it. And that's the tricky part that I talked about in front, because if you have a relative that had lots, if you purchase a lot from me, what I will do, are you going to plan on having anybody else you can think of, your kids? You know, things happen, you don't know. I've got one right now where I have a young man that just passed. His grandparents own the lot. And they came and the grandparents are not in there, and they said, okay, this is where I want him, I'm giving him permission. It was not in my computer in notes that says that he could use it. So if they were already passed, and he went, I could not bury him there. So, what I'll do with you is we'll sit down, we'll go over who you want to have rights to your lots. And the other part is, if you do leave state and you end up being buried someplace else, we can sell you back your lots for what you paid for them. I've got people that are in different states and they'll come to me, but it's at what you paid for the lots. If you bought lots 20 years ago and it was $25 a space, that's what you're gonna get paid. Today, the lots are $400 for residents, $800 for non-residents.
What's the purpose of non-biodegradable?
Because if it breaks down and then the hole sinks, so you look in the old section where before they started putting them in vaults and the casket would decay, you'll see a sink in the ground. And then we gotta go back and we have to fix those. And there's so much in it, and it's just, you know, as you go and you progress in things, so the non-biodegradable, it's never gonna break down. And once I cap it off, it is how it's going to be, and it will never settle.
And people can fall through those sunken
Oh,
graves.
I've had people fall in.
People that are doing genealogy.
You walking across these old sites and all of a sudden you're right up to your knees or further and
Yeah, I employ people to mow cemeteries and they drop to their knees,
yeah,
just push the lawnmower.
yeah, it's a surprise.
Another question is, can you bury, if you own enough land in Maine, can you bury on your own property?
You have to establish
Yeah, that's something that you would have to do with like an attorney and then if you take and consider something like that, you do it on your own property because we do have.
They're gonna
We
classify
know.
it because it's a family
It falls to us.
Yeah.
I'm the director and state registrar, but they do the research about this thing. And Melissa is my death guru. But she can talk about what the rules are in, Maine for a family cemetery.
Do you wanna come sit up here?
No.
Or at least stand up.
In the state of Maine, if you own property and you want to be buried on your property, you have to register that parcel, which can be no more than 1/4 of an acre. Get it surveyed, register it with the registrar of deeds at the town or county level. I usually tell people both. It has to be fenced in. And what happens is this now, even if that property is sold down the line, your descendants always have access to that, by law. But it's perfectly legal to be buried on your property, but there's a little bit of paperwork you have to do.
And you do have to be mindful of a water source, a well.
200
Yes.
feet away.
Feet away from
200 feet
a.
away from a water source and 100 feet away from your neighbor.
And also to keep in mind, we've got 7 cemeteries that we have picked up that were family cemeteries and we have to maintain them. We've got one cemetery that, I don't know what we're doing with it, but we had just found out about it 2 years ago. There's trees growing up through it and so, yeah, family burial on your own property is kind of like, yeah, it'd be a neat idea, but who's gonna end up with it?
Well, why can't you say 50 years from now, 100 years from now, stop being a cemetery?
Hmm.
Nothing there.
It gets designated as an ancient burying ground.
Hmm.
And then there's a volunteer organization in the state called Maine Old Cemetery Association.
And they will take care of it.
And they go around, they do cleaning, they do workshops, if they have the equipment available to them, they'll reset stones.
If it's a veteran there by federal law, the grave has to be taken care of as well. There's a gentleman by the name of Barrett Cosgrove who works for the Department of Environmental Health, which actually oversees cemeteries and crematoriums. And I would advise you, if anyone's considering planning a cemetery on their property, he's a more recent employee of that state office, and he's very great. He's more than happy to help you. He's very engaging as opposed to the previous employees there. He's all about doing it the right way, and he's very congenial and easy to work with. Department of Environmental Health, and they'll direct you. You can also go to Maine.gov and go to Maine Cemetery Law, and it'll tell you what we just talked about with the quarter acre and all that. There's also, we talked about who's in charge, and there's a legal list in there about spouse, domestic partner, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right down through about who has legal say about who can be buried in the lot, who's in charge of the funeral arrangements. And we all follow that list.
And I have started resetting stones. I took and worked with a gentleman out of New York that, his business name is Gravestones Matters. He restores old sites around the states, around New England. I worked with him a little bit, last year, the year prior, picking up knowledge, because we have a lot of stones down there, especially over in Woodside. And, last year I reset, 7 or 8 stones in one big Rockford site that the big curbings were tipping out and breaking off, and we put that in our budget for me to be able to do that for these old stones that, family's not around anymore, so I reset them. It's kind of neat because I got the line, and the line on the back of the special mortar line, they say they've been in business since 30 BC. Imagine being able to trace your business back then. And it's really neat because the more you mix it and these stones, the marble stones, white marble stones, is what a lot of these old stones are made out of. After I clean them and detour them and get them all reset, the mortar turns the same color as the stones. And it's really neat. So it's actually satisfying to do, because it's like, that nobody's gonna take care of that. I've even found a 10-year-old boy's stone that was, somebody must have knocked over somehow through the years, and it got put over the side over the bank, and I found it and I restored it back to its rightful place. So there's some really neat perks in doing this job, and that's one of them, because you can sit back and look at it and say, well, it's actually respectable, and
I think it's important to make it clear, and it's very admirable that Belgrade is doing it. We do it in the community where I live in Monmouth, but there's no legal requirement for this young man to do it, or the town of Belgrade. Actually, all those stones are someone's personal property. But as a philosopher once said, you can judge the quality of a society by the way in which they take care of their dead. So that shows that the town of Belgrade cares. But they are under no legal obligation to do that. So that's a high grade, or an A+ in my mind when you see a town cleaning and restoring stones because they care about the people and the ancestors there. And another interesting aspect about it, not only is the stone considered your personal property, and may be covered under your homeowners if a tree falls on it. Well, most of your insurance companies, not all, but most will cover that, just something to keep in mind if something happens, or someone drives off the road and inadvertently hits it. But also, this may sound a little cold, but the remains in the ground, whether they be cremains or a full body, those are considered like your automobile, your personal property. That's just the fact of it all.
And we do everything on this computer that, one of the other projects that I'm working on is I'm going through the entire cemetery and all the stones and everything in there. I go to each lot, check it, probe it, take pictures of it, download it on the media, and we have these QR codes at the end of each. We have 5 different sections in our cemetery, and there's a QR code. You take a picture of it and it'll go to a search. And you type in search and it will GPS you right to the stone, and it shows you a picture of it. I'm only through 5, 4, and part 3 right now because there's so much other stuff that's going on, and it's a long process because in the computer and in the paperwork and the confusion with not people writing enough stuff down or not having enough information, you have to call a lot of people, talk to people, and see if you can't figure out what exactly was going on. That's happened quite a bit. And then you can just go right, like I said, to the QR code, take a picture, put in search, show you a picture of the stone, and you can GPS yourself, it'll show footprints right to the.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I've
So
seen-
just one more thing, the cost of the lot includes perpetual care, so what is
Perpetual care.
perpetual care
And you can-
and
you
the
can pay.
flower?
No, you can pay for a flower fund. Flower fund is
Okay.
separate. Yeah, there, we have perpetual care and then,
So the perpetual care, the cost of the lot takes
Yeah.
care of perpetual care, which includes.
just weed whacking, maintaining, going around. We don't clean the stones. It's not in our job description. We do it because we take pride in our cemetery. And families should take care of it. Like I said, your kids might visit, grandkids maybe. After that, you pretty much, it's just, and that's where the perpetual care comes in. We'll weed whack and go around the stones and take care of them, and probably won't be touched again until a storm knocks it over or somebody, and like he said, somebody runs it over. Last year, we had a gentleman foggy out, he went right through into the Quaker cemetery, ripped down our fence and over our graves, and he was all shocked up and right beside himself, and he said, did I run anybody over? I said, it's okay, they were already dead. So, it just makes a lot more work for me, because now I have to go in and fix it all, yeah, so it will be taken care of in this yard as long as I'm here.
You guys
And
do
the flower
a wonderful
purchase.
job.
Not everybody knows about the flower
Yeah,
purchase.
the flower fund is, I think it's $100
$100
And
per flower
per flower, and then we're
forever.
forever. It goes on your grave every
Every
year. We
year,
put a flower
every
or
Memorial
two, or
Day.
whatever it is, we'll put them on your stone. We have this big group of volunteers. And last year, I think we put out 1,500 or 1,600 flowers in Woodside and Pine Grove alone.
We do the veterans.
Yeah.
Graves and
Yeah,
then
and we
the
have-
perpetual care.
We have over 660 veterans in our cemetery.
Yeah.
Well, you guys do a great job, because I think we have one of the most beautiful cemeteries.
I agree.
do.
And one of our older ones, we have an Ellis Cemetery, and there's veteran in there from, it says 1745 Mass Militia, before he was even a state. So you see stuff like that, and it's really neat, and it's taken care of.
I just thought of that the other day. I was asking Wesley, our son works with them in the cemetery, so, I get all the to do and not to do. I'm like, can I do this? No.
You can't leave a beer bottle beside the grave.
But I was just,
Oh, I pick them up all the time.
I was
Like
just
a
wondering,
big
like,
roll.
what is I asked myself, I'm like, I wonder what the oldest stone in Belgrade is.
1745 is the oldest one I've come across.
That's amazing.
There is one, the guy was born in 1709, and that's right up in Pine Grove, right in the big yellow pines that are growing up.
Yep.
The southern yellows.
Yep.
There's a newer stone with it. Those, I don't even know how I don't even think I'll consider touching them,
Mhm.
because they're just slate and they're so delicate.
Right.
And, but it's neat because they are, if they could talk,
Right.
know,
Oh, yeah.
I often think about it when I'm in these old yards and I'm going through with, a bucket tractor or an excavator to dig a hole or something. It's like, what would they think if they saw this equipment?
Yeah.
And you look at these old monuments, how massive they are, and it was done with horse and buggy, and it's like, and then they see this modern equipment coming with boom cranes, and, it's just kind of neat.
So you're not allowed to put any of those big ones anymore, right?
No, they can't be over 4 feet in height.
What's the purpose for not allowing color bearing? Cause a lot of places are going to putting them in.
What is it?
Yeah, to have the little
Because-
niche walls or
Above
something where you
ground.
could put in.
Yeah.
Because we don't want anybody to just, everything's dug is, hey, if somebody comes in and they've got that in there and they just put it in, and I don't know about it. And it's, so now there's no documentation of it, there's no records with the state of Maine, there's no records in my cemetery, so if I'm asked, I have no
But
idea.
aren't they locked?
No, nobody should be going in and putting any.
Yeah, I guess I was
They're
thinking of
usually
something.
locked, and
That's
the
wrong.
sexton is the holder.
In
of
charge,
it.
exactly.
Yeah, and,
Right.
but as far as it
Or in
goes,
the veteran-
that's just,
They just mount, drill.
that
right
was
line.
one of the ordinance I was adopted to when I got here, and that's, and I, like I said, I have a committee of 5 that I have to answer to.
I just wondered because a lot of towns are moving towards those.
Because it allows
Yeah.
more people to be
Yeah.
buried in a smaller
There's-
space.
There's actually a niche wall, or not niche, but a columbarium with niches in it right near your personal lot in Winthrop. That we just installed a year or so ago, and that was a little controversial over there, but they allowed it. But it's not every cemetery allows every kind of monument or service, there's different limitations, so.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know like down in Portland, they've got them, they're like huge walls and you can just, I've got relatives in down there and it's, to me, it's weird, but whatever. They can go and unlock it and look at it and it's like, no, I don't know, it's kind of, yeah.
To each his own. I mean, I personally wouldn't like that, but we have a multitude of families that are, and we do it, the main veteran cemetery frequently, for example.
I mean, some people just wanna be scattered in the ocean or wherever they wanna be, but
Under the apple tree.
under the apple tree, yeah.
You have lots of,
Well, and natural organic reduction is now allowed in Maine, so.
exactly, with
you
no
can-
facility.
We don't have a facility, but there is rules that are drafted and it's allowable, so
And Mr.
basically you're turned into
Mulch,
mulch, potting soil.
a yard to 2 yards of material.
But how do you, like, you can't control what someone does on their own property, how do you know? I know this sounds gross, but I've heard of someone doing it, taking some of the remains and sprinkling, on the ground, or
They
sprinkling.
do.
They do, people do it all the time.
Good for grass.
But you look at it as,
Okay.
you may never have full purchase or ownership of that property.
Right,
It can go someplace else. Now, somebody, you have a family member later on does ancestry, they wanna go and they know that that's what's happened, they found out that's what happened. Now they gotta ask permission to go and
Visit the site.
visit the site,
right,
so. I look at if somebody does it in the ocean, it's easy to go to the ocean,
right,
you know what I mean? But if you do it on personal property, life is not stationary.
Right.
People are in continuous motion and you're not promised tomorrow, so you never know what's gonna end up with your property.
It's kind of contradictory the way that the law's written, because disposition of a body with cremation ends at the crematory. So supposedly everything's done. However, there's a lot of howevers though in state law,
right.
because you're just not supposed to go and scatter cremains on the ocean edge. There's a law that says you're supposed to go so many miles out.
Mm,
There's lots of laws or
Too many laws,
too many laws,
too many laws.
but there's several laws that contradict the final disposition. It's final, but not really.
So,
There's so many, in the new ask stuff, and I really agree.
mm.
Can I ask him a question? So you live right here in Belgrade?
I do.
I never realized that. And
Right.
Melissa's,
Yeah.
And Waterville.
you're in Waterville, just not far away, so. Okay, I just want to say I didn't realize that, and I've known you for a long time, and I think.
Many generations Belgrade, but.
Well, you're like me,
yeah.
you're a townie.
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
yeah, I'm not from away.
Not from away, no, me neither, my hometown, this is 1790. I just wanna say for this group that, these are two of my favorite ladies, and they affect cemeteries. In the death care world, we'll say from Fort Kent to Elliott, Maine. So there's a lot of knowledge right here, in these two ladies, so you're very fortunate to have them to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, if there's no more questions, thank you all for coming,
Yeah,
and thank you.
Thank you very much, thank you for inviting us.
very good.
And everybody help themselves.
Yes.
And then please help and goodies.
Take a folder and.